Welcome to the Food Professor Podcast, live in Montreal from the SIAL Food Innovation Show. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm the Food Professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Live and on camera, so be sure and tune in to our YouTube. If all goes well, I'll have this right up, warts and all. Warts and all will be up there, so you get to see how the sausage is made, so to speak. Sticking with the food theme. Our guest this week on the pod is not recorded here at SIAL. We got lots of interviews coming up, but the first day at the show is typically when everybody's just kind of getting landed. So we got tons of stuff going on tomorrow and Friday. But our guest on the pod this week, recorded last week, is Dylan Munro, Canadian-born and raised COO and co-founder at Spot and Tango. Spot and Tango delivers human-grade, vet-developed dog food through a subscription model. Yep. They call it the UnKibble, which is very fun. Nutritional integrity of fresh food, convenience of dry, and millions served in the U.S., and now they've launched in Canada. Now, so it's not like food for pets has not come up in the past episodes from processors, but I don't think we've ever had a pet food or dog food or pet food supplier, right?
Yeah, first time. So I thought our conversation was really interesting. And frankly, I think the pet economy is just growing in Canada. Mm-hmm. We're having fewer kids, and of course, a lot of people want companionship, friendship, and you have a pet.
It feels the elasticity of pet food is different in some ways than human food. I mean, my perspective is a little pragmatic in that, I think, I buy a product that's a dry product that's made in Alberta, and I like their maker. A friend of mine used to say it was like steak on a plate quality. And I'm a little pragmatic about it because I think, well, the better the food in, the less time my dog's going to spend at the vet. If I can do anything to avoid taking him to the vet.
When I speak to people in the dog food business, they often say, listen, from a regulatory perspective, it's very similar to the human chain. And so they're facing, companies in the pet food business, they face similar challenges.
Sure.
So, and people may think, well, it's pet food. It's not we're not talking about the same quality. Actually, it's kind of is.
Everybody wants safe products, right?
Absolutely.
I can't think of anything worse.
And my guess is that companies like Dylan's are going to get more attention because people will care more and more about pet and will want to invest more and more money on their pets.
Yep. All right, so we'll get to that a little later in the show. Now, before we talk about that and a bunch of other things, it's going to be a busy show. We're here at SIAL. It is day one. You've had a chance to wander around both the main floor and up on the top floor. We're here in Montreal.
7th floor,
that's new, right? I mean, it's booming. What's your first and early impressions to the show?
Yeah, actually, well, I don't think it's the first time they have a 7th floor. It's just the first time I was able to have some time to go to the 7th floor.
I think it might be the first time since COVID, because you were telling me you were just raving about this show.
Yeah.
And my experience of SIAL has all been post-COVID.
That's right.
So maybe, I think somebody said that we used to do this, but now this is one of the first years here in Montreal that we're back and expanding. That may or may not be true. Mael, if you're listening, correct me if I'm wrong. But
no, absolutely. Now, SIAL is just an amazing show. You go to the main hall, the 5th floor, and you see the similar players there, lots of countries. And it's always interesting. The 7th floor, so 2 floors above, that's where you find startups. And frankly, if you want to know more about what's likely to happen, what entrepreneurs are thinking about, how they see the food chain and how they want to improve it, you go to the 7th floor. And what I saw was a lot of ingredients, lots of new juices. Of course, protein is still there for sure. The main theme I saw on the 7th floor was really authentic products, authentic ingredients, going back to the farm.
What do you mean authentic? What does that mean?
Less processing when it comes to ingredients, like, for example, flour. Okay. So I saw a company selling flour, and that flour is probably about $60 for a 20-kilo bag versus $20 for a 20-kilo bag, and the guy was selling me, well, why would I buy that flour to make bread? And I tasted the bread. Yikes! Material
difference.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
But of course, you can't sell your bread at the same price.
Sure.
So I think there's some.
That's always been a risk. I've talked about this before. This is always a risk sometimes when we're at the show, is we see some really great innovation, but in an environment of food affordability, is it right for the market? Is the timing right? Is the TAM, as we would say, the total addressable market that would pay enough?
What I find interesting with innovation this year is it's like inflation doesn't exist.
Right. Right.
They're just looking at the market. The middle class is doing great.
The top of the K. This is the top of the K conference.
Top of the K.
I mean, that's a bit of the risk. It's a top of the K conference. Yeah. I'm sure there's there's hundreds and hundreds of booths out here selling all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. But if you were to pick between the bottom of the K or top of the K, you pick the top.
I don't know. Maybe you get the volume in the bottom of the K, and you can make your margins in other ways, right?
Maybe
there's money to be made. I mean, there's a lot of people shopping at Dollarama, right? You making smaller food sizes for.
And by the way, I mean, I did have a lot of discussion about maple syrup today.
Yeah,
we are in Montreal.
I want to get to that.
Speaking of bottom feeders, speaking of pushing. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed, but maple syrup is actually pretty cheap these days. You can find cans at $5-6 when you know that to make a can is $5.50, $5.75.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, there's
now we're not talking about we're going to talk about it later in the show, but there's this issue about some adulterated 50% sugar, 50%. You're not talking about that. You're talking about pure maple syrup pricing.
Pure maple syrup, and it's the race to the bottom right now when it comes to maple syrup, which actually goes to the case that we wanted to talk about. Yeah. The adulterated maple syrup. I think the pressure came from the market.
Interesting.
I mean, grocers. I mean, a lot right now. There's a lawsuit. The Federation is going against the producer. Okay. There's a lot of finger pointing at the producer, which is fine. It's fair game, but.
So this producer, just so in case somebody's new to the podcast, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago where a producer was caught adulterating maple syrup with 50% sugar.
Sugar cane syrup.
And basically was caught by the CBC, I think. Investigative reports.
The French CBC.
He was kind of bragging about it. Hey, I got shelf space.
And it was a pretty thorough investigation by the CBC, to be honest.
Yeah.
And but I'm just asking myself, where were the grocers? If someone comes to you and sells you maple syrup at $3 a can, wouldn't you want to ask questions? And there's a strategic reserve. You know that there's a certain price. It's maple syrup. I mean, maple syrup at $3
seems.
Is it stolen? Is it counterfeited? What's going on here? And so,
I mean, if they offered them Kit Kat bars for half price, you'd have a pretty good idea. Yeah. Hey, they got stolen in Poland on the way to Italy, or you remember that big?
Yeah. So thing. There are a few grocers, and I won't name them, and we all know who they are. They didn't really ask questions. They sold these cans. They sold this product without asking questions. So counterfeiting and food fraud is a supply chain issue, not just one culprit, and we go after them. Now, again, I'm expecting the Federation to go after that one producer, but I don't think we should actually, keep grocers off the hook here. They're responsible because the transaction was between the grocer and the consumer, really.
Before we get to the news, I want to take a moment and pass along my condolences for the loss of your brother. You lost a brother last week.
Yes, Charlie.
Tell us some of your best memories about Charlie.
Charlie, we knew in March that he was dying, cancer, pancreatic cancer. In fact, it was just everywhere, and he didn't have many days to live. And he had a bucket list item he wanted to cover, and that was going to see the Blue Jays at Rogers Center for the first time. So we just make it happen. My brother Patrick just made it all happen.
Literally weeks ago, right?
Yeah, exactly. 3 weeks ago. Yeah, 3 weeks ago, and went to the Blue Jays game. Saw Ohtani bash the Blue Jays 14-2. We didn't care. We didn't care. Seriously, it was just a great time, and I had to. And after that, I had to head back to Halifax, and it was the last time I saw him alive. And so he passed away very suddenly. And in terms of food, I must say, he was a hell of a barbecue fan. Just so I'm sure you'd be pleased by that. His barbecue was, I wouldn't say as impressive as yours, but close, very close. He was proud of his barbecue, and he was a great cook, really, to be honest. And so we're going to miss him. He was 61 years old. Yeah. Grandfather of two.
All right. Well, farewell to Charlie.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Let's get on to the news of the week, and there's plenty of it. Let's first start with kind of breaking news, recording this on the Wednesday. Both the Fed and the Bank of Canada have kept interest rates steady, and clearly they're looking around the world and seeing some more disruption and turmoil. We still have the Strait of Hormuz blocked. There's still embargoes happening. We seem to have reached a point where they want to negotiate by Zoom or something. Getting on a plane, getting off a plane. We seem to have reached some kind of weird stasis in this fight. Now, we're going to talk about other implications, but now I've lost track. I mean, how long has this been? Many, many, many weeks.
Yeah.
And I just got off one of my other podcasts.
My tax started on February 28th.
And I guess the strait was closed very shortly thereafter to traffic. Now, I just got off recording one of my other podcasts, the Global E-Commerce Leaders Forum, and we were talking to international shippers and logistics people, and they were like, listen, these boats are going around the Horn of Africa. It's adding 14 days. That's taking boats out of, the knock-on effect, that's taking the boats out of commission because they're 14 days late because they got to go around. So what are you thinking now about the impact on food pricing and agriculture? We can imagine, if it was resolved tomorrow, there's still going to be implications. But at what point are we like, this is big trouble for the rest of the year?
I honestly think it's going to last for a while. It is the Middle East. I mean, I do think that a few weeks ago, we all realized that the White House didn't really have a plan to secure the Strait of Hormuz. I think it's pretty clear now, which was incredibly irresponsible because that strait impacts the entire world. In fact, So I wrote a book on food geopolitics for the University of Toronto Press.
Right.
And there's just one chapter that I wrote before the holidays on the Strait of Hormuz. So I knew when Iran was attacked, that was just one area that I was hoping the Americans to have a plan for. They don't, because oil is at $107 a barrel. That's really up there. It's going to really impact everyone. Despite what Mr. Carney's doing with taxes, I don't think it's going to make much of a difference
to the average. The average consumer.
Exactly, and there's the fertilizer double whammy that could actually happen later this year if we see yields being impacted all over the world, seeing farmers putting less money in the ground. And so I do think it's going to really affect input costs in manufacturing, and that actually matters to a lot of people here at SIAL, because most of the people that are here, manufacturers, they make products.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really our role to prognosticate when it's going to end, but I think at this point it's gone on long enough that, like, let's just say it was resolved tomorrow, because these things are pretty dynamic. Do you still see, I mean, it probably takes 6 months for this all still to sort out in the supply chain, even if it was in some way, shape, or form fixed. Would you agree that, this could impact food prices for the rest of the year?
Oh, absolutely. And so we did, I mean, when we published Canada's food price report in December, we were kind of predicting some sort of unrest in the Middle East. We didn't know how it was going to look like, but we knew that, if something happens in the Middle East, it will impact the entire world. And so we now know that it started on February 28th.
So wait a minute. Your model for that report already took into account a disruption like this, so we can expect that the higher end of that model, the higher end was like 4 to 6%, right?
That's right.
So we would expect the higher end of the model, but it's already in some ways factored in, so you would expect not to be higher than the higher model. Like this wasn't a shock exogenous to the report?
Yeah, so our window, like our ceiling and bottom basically is 4 to 6%, and so because something happened in the Middle East, we're going to be closer to 5 to 6%, I would say, by the end of the year. So we're at 4.4.
I'm actually a little encouraged by that because I was like, oh my God, if it's going to be 6% now, we got to load this in. Do we get even higher? But
no. Well, so in March last week we saw inflation hit 4% for food. That's a bottom. That's a bottom,
right?
I think so. April,
the best it's going to get. It's the best it's going to get.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, and we already have the highest food inflation rate amongst G7 countries already.
Yeah, other structural issues behind that we've talked about.
And I saw on X today that we have the highest food inflation rate amongst G20 countries.
Hey, look at us.
We're number one.
Shooting up the rankings, right? Look at us.
I haven't verified the source, but for the G7, I know because I checked. But for the G20, I'm not too sure because you got Russia in there. You got. I mean, China? Yikes.
Yeah.
Do you rely on that data?
Yeah. Well, I don't, but others might. Anyway, let's talk about. Let's bring it home. And talk about the Canadian government. They issued a spring version of the FES, Fall Economic Statement. What do we call it? A CES? I don't know.
A cesspool?
What are you sussed about the CES? I mean, yay for Iran war because the oil revenues are skyrocketing, which has helped minimizing any impact.
Yeah, I was in Alberta last week.
Yeah, there.
I mean, I'm seeing deans. I'm seeing deans and presidents of universities getting memos from the premier's office saying, "How can we spend more money?" Because they're looking at a surplus. They went from a $9 billion deficit to potentially a $5-6 billion surplus.
Yay for the Iran war. I mean,
and of course, Ottawa will benefit from that, but we don't want to say it too loudly because it's oil. It's dirty oil.
I guess. I don't know. Now, we just saw the Ag Minister here, actually, was here doing the ribbon cutting, Heath MacDonald.
Yep.
He walked by the booth, which I guess now is the closest we're going to get to having him on the podcast.
I didn't see him.
Yeah, I saw him. He walked right past the booth. I waved at him, and that's probably as close as we're going to get at this point.
Did he recognize you?
He did not. Okay. He was, to be fair, he had a bunch of people around him. He was cutting the ribbon, do some nice stuff, opening the show, making some nice comments, I'm sure, about the business. Now, any highlight, let's get back to the CES and I want to keep this separate. I want to talk later about this Canadian Sovereignty Wealth Fund later. But when you saw the numbers coming out of the CES, any thoughts on the top for the ag industry more than just the state of the economy? Any thoughts?
Not really. I mean, seriously, it's... To be quite honest, I think it's a nothing burger. There was nothing there that would get me excited about ag and food. And
excited or angry? So you're kind of in the middle. Nothing.
My expectations were very low.
Okay.
I mean, when's the last time you heard Prime Minister Carney talk about ag and food? I don't remember.
China, India, he mentioned.
Well, he did then.
Sure. Anyway, that's the last time I heard him
to settle
talk about
a dispute that was really it was long overdue, and you have to give credit to him for doing that. Yeah. Because I do think that he, I mean, the fact that we're actually putting ahead food over cars was, I don't think, a bad thing.
Nope.
It was the right thing to do. But other than that, when it comes to wealth creation, when it comes to economic development in Canada, I haven't really seen any evidence from this particular spring budget that ag and food is more of a priority, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this Canadian Sovereign Wealth Fund. Some are calling it the Sovereign Debt Fund, which is what it struck as me. Now, I'm not a former governor of the Bank of Canada. I took economics in graduate school, but I'm sure there's more interesting things. I mean, part of what it...
And you'll be interviewing Stephen Polo soon.
I will be.
You should be asking him.
I will be getting his impression about the broader economic trends. Former bank himself.
It's great. I've actually talked to him.
Yeah, I've had him on the Voice of Retail before. And he had a great book about forecasting disruptions in the years to come, so I wanted to tap back into that, so to speak. Did you expect this much disruption? But, on the surface of things, it kind of sounded like some crown corporation. The U.S. is doing this too, like actually investing, taking equity in firms they're going to invest in. I guess my question was, where's the money coming from? I mean, we're approaching like 40% GDP. Our debt's like 40% of GDP. So you did an interesting post. It reminded us of a couple of things. First, it reminded us about the Alberta Heritage Savings Fund, Lougheed's fund, where they built up this big reserve, this big heritage, basically a sovereign wealth fund. Yeah. But you kind of said, hey, there could be something here for agriculture. Yes. Depends on how it shakes out. What are your early thoughts about the idea of this fund?
My early thoughts was, that's an interesting concept. And then after that, I got to the details of it. Because I didn't know where the money came from. I actually didn't know it was going to be on our credit card, collective credit card. It is. And then I said,
or maybe I'll be asked like war bonds to, double invest and get low return.
And then I heard that we're creating a new Crown Corporation. That just irked me.
Yeah.
Because, we're claiming now it's going to be operating at arm's length. It won't. We know that. And crowns are crowns. I mean,
nothing like enhancing productivity with the Crown Corporation.
The board is going to be appointed based on with orders of council. I mean, that's so these appointments are going to be political, and so the government is going to pick and choose winners and losers.
That's based in the
and the worst part is that we're often referring this fund based on what Norway is seeing and what Quebec is doing and what other provinces are doing, but all of them are actually making money investing outside of the country. So Norway is investing almost entirely outside of Norway. Quebec, the Caisse de dépôt right here in Quebec is a success story, but most of the Caisse's portfolio is spent outside of Quebec to provide wealth to Quebec.
Now you would be a fan, though. I mean, we've talked before about how ag could become a superpower. That's just
absolutely.
That's basically is a big theme of our podcast.
Yeah.
That we're underinvest in innovation here. So I guess my way of asking you is: are you reserving some optimism that a fund that is focused in such a way could help ag? Is there a kernel of optimism there? Is there somewhere deep down a little piece of light at the end of this?
What I like about the
beginning of this story?
What I like about the fund is that there is some room for the private sector to be engaged.
All right.
Even you and I can invest in the fund, by the way.
Fantastic.
So, it's great.
All right.
That aspect I like. And at some point, when you see these funds coming in and say, listen, we need to focus more on our food security and our agri-food sector to generate wealth, then, there's potential there and there's hope there. But so far, I'm a little skeptical.
Okay.
What about you?
I'm kind of in a wait and see. I mean,
are you going to invest like?
I think I already am with my tax dollars, so I think I don't want to, good portfolio management. I don't want to double invest. It's like
it's only $25 billion. It's no big deal.
Boy, these things start to add up, though. I don't know where. I genuinely, and we talked about this before. I'm not sure Canadians are being told about the trade-offs that they're making or we're making, and we haven't been offered.
But I got to tell you, the Globe and Mail, which is a newspaper I respect, but in recent years I saw them just jump on the Liberal bandwagon. Just today, I saw two great columns from Robert Fife and Andrew Coyne. They were incredibly honest. And
they seem to be asking the right questions.
They are asking the right questions. And kudos.
I like Andrew Coyne. I like Andrew.
I think he's a smart guy, but I think for a while he kind of lost the plot there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Let's move off of that. Let's talk about the Canadian Food Sentiment Index, the biannual insight report, flagship initiative by the Dow Agri-Food Analytics
Shamelessly
Lab.
copied from Purdue University.
And powered by Cattle, I believe.
Yes, that's right.
Powered by Cattle Insights. So what are the first of all, what are the objectives of the report, and what did you learn? Any surprises? Talk about it.
It's not just a survey, it's an index. So we try to assess sentiment over time. So we can actually survey Canadians, but what about movement? Like do people feel more concerned about food inflation or less concerned? And are they concerned about food safety? Do they trust grocers? I mean, we ask them tons of questions every 6 months. And so we compare results from one report to another. And the overarching theme for this particular report, which is our fourth one.
When did you ask these questions? Before or after the war started?
Right when the war was started.
So early days of the war.
Early March.
Okay.
Yeah, early March. And so what we notice is that people are not panicking anymore with food prices, but they're still concerned and they're adapting. They're adapting to higher food prices, essentially.
In what way?
It's the new normal for them.
They're trading down.
They're shopping elsewhere. I mean, the average consumer is going to the grocery store 5.45 times a month now versus less than 5 times a month 2 years ago. And so they're basically...
That's a bit of a COVID behavior, though. We thought the COVID era, people started to break some habits of going to one place and one place only, and now they kind of shop in multiple places. I remember we had a discussion with Per Bank about that they were seeing the same thing.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Multiple visits.
So we started the index in 2024, so we can't go back in time. So in 2024, that's what we saw, and we're seeing a trend that is pushing consumers to see more stores. So that trend is actually growing.
That's one of their responses to inflation is the little more bargain hunting.
That's right.
Checking through the flyers. Going
one surprise is that the older consumers are actually ordering more online.
Interesting.
We often think that the younger, so the 80s and up, they're ordering way more online. Yeah, at percentage. And omnivores appear to be a dying breed. It's 55% of Canadians that consider themselves as omnivores.
And explain omnivores.
Omnivores are people with no restrictions. They eat meat, they eat anything, but
eat veggies. They just generally
vegetarians. We were at a high point with vegetarians. Vegans, they haven't moved.
It's always kind of a niche category.
Yeah, exactly.
They punch above their weight, so to speak, in awareness in the media, but they're really a niche category.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so you have pescatarians, flexitarians are up.
I used to call myself an opportunistic omnivore because
I can see
there's some things I don't eat, but until it's really good, and then I might try it.
Yeah, exactly.
Before we get to our interview with Dylan from Spot and Tango, let's talk about the surveillance pricing issue that's suddenly come up.
Now, I'm getting a lot of questions about that.
It's interesting, right? Because historically, if I can say the word historically, the FCC in America did a research about this issue back in 2024. Now it's resurfaced in Canada. Primarily through new NDP leader Avi Lewis, who I think had a little tete-a-tete with Wab Kinew.
Yep.
And I think he spotlighted that as, this is a great way to get into the media. Let's talk about surveillance price. Now, two things for you. First, explain to the people what surveillance pricing is, as you understand it, and then what are your thoughts? We've seen retailers, the top three retailers in the media saying, we don't do it, we don't intend to do it. What do you make of all this?
Yeah, so surveillance. So lots of talk about dynamic pricing, and dynamic pricing to me is one way to optimize transactions between supply and demand. And so, if inventories are low, you spike up prices to reduce demand, and the reverse is the same. If inventories are high, you stimulate demand by bringing down prices in real time. So that's dynamic pricing.
That's dynamic price.
Okay. Yeah. Surveillance pricing is dynamic pricing on steroids.
At the individual level, right?
That's right.
That you and me would get something completely
So you have
price.
A digital profile. You have an algorithm that I can use to custom price products sold to you.
Right.
Because of how much you're worth, where you live.
All kinds of information. They profile you and say...
What kind of websites do you visit?
You make outrageous amounts of money as a university professor. We're going to charge you more than... the poor guy
or less.
Who runs, podcasts.
It can go both ways. Let's say, for example, you're a grocer wanting to sell to Michael LeBlanc because his neighbors are all rich, and you want to penetrate that market, and you want Michael LeBlanc to brag to his neighbors that he bought bananas half price at some retailer. So it can go both ways. But the bottom line, and this is Avi Lewis's argument, is that it can lead to discrimination. And I agree with that. I actually do agree. I think there is a line that can be crossed, and I don't think the Canadians are willing to see, a necessity of life being bargained just based on who you are. Flights, fine. Hotels, fine. Policy insurance, fine. But when it comes to food, it's a fundamental necessity. I'm not sure. So I do agree with seeing a government looking into this matter right now, and I know you disagree with me.
I don't exactly. I just think looking into what? Because suddenly it comes up.
Well, Maryland just basically outlawed it.
Well, everybody's outlawing something that's not happening, though. There's only been one example of it ever happening. It's a great political issue, is my point.
Of course it is, but I do think it's a bit of a blind spot for our society and for grocers as well. It's not happening in Canada.
I think I
see no evidence it's happening right now.
You know what I think animates this episode or this issue particularly is this inflection point with all this talk about AI and its potential.
Oh yeah. But you remember in December when we talked about topics we're expecting 2006? What's the one thing I told you? 2026 will be the year when AI will become an issue for consumers, because AI has been around in the industry for a long time. But for the very first time, the interface between the consumer and the industry will be impacted by AI, and consumers will want to say. And so now we're integrating the consumer into models, AI models. And from a policy perspective, from a regulatory perspective, there are a lot of unknowns. That's probably why we're hearing about this now.
Also, nobody's been talking about the NDP for like 2 years, so now they are. So I think that's also something to do with it.
No, I think it was a good idea.
Kudos to him. He found an issue that nobody else is talking about.
It's a retail issue.
It strikes at food affordability.
So instead of hugging trees, it connects. It resonates with a lot of people.
Yeah. All right. I'm sure it's not the last we're going to talk about that. In fact, we probably might mention that we're having Kim Furlong on the podcast in a couple of weeks, and we'll get her perspective of what her members are saying about
the new CEO of RCC, Retail Council of Canada.
That's right. Yeah. So we'll get her perspective on that and several other things. Let's now get to our interview with Dylan from Spot and Tango, and then we'll be back with a few more stories to wrap the show. Dylan, welcome to the Food Professor podcast. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing, Michael?
I'm doing fantastic. Sylvain is trying to get over his long flight back home. How are you, Sylvain? Are you
very good, very good. I was looking forward to this talk. Absolutely. I don't own a pet, unlike Michael. Yeah. But I'm intrigued by what's going on with the pet economy for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. For the listeners, I don't know. Sylvain, I think this might be the first time we've done pet food. I mean, we've talked about pet food with many of our guests. It is the
first time.
Yeah, we've talked about pet food with many of our guests who provide ingredients or inputs into pet food, and we've talked about it broadly. But Dylan, thanks so much for joining us. We get to dive into this sector of the ag economy. So where are we finding you today, Dylan?
I am currently in New York, in Midtown, at our head office.
Now, you were born and raised, I saw, in Oakville, so you got Canadian roots. And how did you find your way to the U.S. and start your business?
Yeah, great question. So, as you said, originally from Oakville, Ontario. When I'm here in the U.S., I tell people I'm from Toronto, but you guys would see right through that. So, for college, for university, I ended up going to Harvard, being lucky enough to go there, and they have an incredibly generous financial aid policy where they offer sort of anybody on a need-based basis, up to a full scholarship. So. That was an offer I couldn't refuse, and after graduating, I studied math and physics. Didn't want to be a professor. No offense, Sylvain, but ended up working at McKinsey for a few years in New York. I rewinding a little bit. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My parents own a music school in Oakville, Burlington, and Vaughan and Thornhill. And it's called Rock This Way School of Rock. And so I grew up teaching drums and guitar and running summer camps and, painting the walls of a new studio when we'd open one. And so always wanted to do something entrepreneurial. And for me, being at McKinsey was a way to learn about business and what industries I liked and didn't like. And at McKinsey, I really gravitated towards the consumer and retail space, spent time with some private equity firms and growth equity firms investing in businesses like Spot and Tango in the e-commerce and direct-to-consumer world. I wasn't really looking to leave, but in 2017, I met Russell, who's my co-founder, and he had originally come up with this idea about healthier dog food with his wife because they were cooking for their own dog, Jack. His wife, Molly's family had always cooked for their dogs. And, their friends and people in the community were asking them, why are you cooking for your dog? What's wrong with regular dog food? And that sort of made Russell think, hey, maybe there's a business here. So he and I were introduced. I grew up with dogs. I've always had, pets, and I love dogs. And when I met Russell and heard sort of the idea, I thought it was a really, really interesting opportunity. So he and I both decided to quit our jobs. Our friends all thought we were a bit crazy, and we left in 2018. And we were cooking food ourselves in a kitchen in Queens, outside of New York, outside of Manhattan. And we, raised a round of funding later that year, started building up the team, supply chain, et cetera. And fast forward, 8 years later, we're still doing it. And
8 years, eh? Okay.
Yeah.
And now you've expanded to Canada. You've expanded to Canada, which is one of the things that brought us together.
Yes.
Now, you just mentioned about the better for you category for pet food. I remember. So, Van, do you remember when I was in? I do a store tour for Canadian retailers in New York City, and I remember I sent you pictures of the Petco in Union Square, and Dylan, you've probably been there. You walk in and you look to your right, and it's a giant kitchen, like Michelin's chef caliber kitchen. You look twice, and it's for the pets. So it's kind of one of my first intros into the. Would you describe we're going to get into a bit more of the business. I mean, it's a premium product, but it's really an interesting take on it. You're in the premiumized take, a sector or segment of the pet food category. Would you agree with that, or did you just create your own sector in some ways?
Yeah. So I'd say that's where our roots are. When we started, we were cooking the food ourselves, as I mentioned, and it was like fresh cooked, meal, almost like lean cuisine for dogs. Like it goes in your freezer, you defrost it, but it's all healthy human grade ingredients. And I'd say that product category in the fresh frozen space is definitely in the premium category. What we've done with our product UnKibble, which we launched in 2020, I can tell you that story. Our whole team had COVID and didn't know it. It was, we were launching it in April of 2020. But that's, I'll tell you that story in a bit. But that product UnKibble is really, in our minds, creating a new category, and it's still a premium category.
It's like a crossover category. I was looking at it, right? Because it's not the go to Petco or whatever. I mean, there's fridges. Sylvain, you and I know you walk the stores. I was in a local store, and a lot of the grocery stores have kind of fridges now. Dylan, what's the TAM for that? What's the total addressable market? Like when you think about the premium, this crossover category is super interesting to me. But who's your typical customer?
Yeah, so for us, the way we think about UnKibble is the entire kibble population, which is 90% plus of pet food. And that's sort of your standard dry kibble. And we see UnKibble as being, yes, a premium alternative, but significantly more healthy and significantly higher quality in terms of the ingredients, and also the personalization aspect, which we can talk more about as well.
Sure.
Without being at the price point of a raw diet or a fresh frozen diet. So we're about 40 to 50% less expensive than sort of the fresh frozen competitive set in Canada.
And even within the kibble, though, there's also a pricing architecture, right? So I feed my dog what I think is, or what I'm told is, or certainly what I spend on it is a premium kibble. But and I remember my friend who ran one of the pet companies, he called it steak on a plate.
Right.
It was at the higher end of kibble, but you could get everyday kibble, no name, whatever kibble, right?
Totally. Yeah. There's a big spectrum within the kibble space, but I think to me, there's still a bright line between is it kibble or is it not? And even if the ingredient quality is better, the processing method for kibble is extremely high temperature, extremely high pressure, which really changes the digestibility and makes it a lot more difficult for dogs to process. And so really we do feel like there is a pretty big difference between kibble and UnKibble, again, hence the name. But yeah, we see the addressable market. Most of our customers are coming from kibble and trading up. There is an increasing, portion of our customers who are trading down from fresh frozen products and finding, hey, wow, this is the same health benefits, but is much more affordable and much more convenient. So we see a lot of customers doing that as well. But still, the vast majority is coming from kibble, either sort of traditional base kibble or a premium kibble.
The human grade notion in pet food is becoming more popular, and I know that a lot of people who actually own pets want to treat their pets as a family, like a family member. Most surveys will suggest that that's exactly what's going on. What does it do to animals? Like, what are we talking about when we talk about human grade?
Yeah, it's a great question, and for us, when we think about human grade, it's really about the quality procedures and the quality assurance that goes into those sort of ingredients versus the feed grade spectrum. And so feed grade is sort of meat meals is typically the core of a normal feed grade kibble product. And those, for example, they can take it, if it's a beef meal, let's say, as long as the majority of it is from a cow, the rest of it could be from other sort of protein sources. Like in some cases, there have been roadkill used in pet food and squirrels and, whatever else they can sort of find. And even the stuff that's beef could be from diseased animals, dying animals. And so the quality is just a lot lower, and people don't really realize that this is what's in there. And that's part of the reason it needs to be cooked at such high temperatures to make sure it's safe. And then there's also just like the quality checks throughout where, our facility, we actually opened a manufacturing facility in Pennsylvania. We are governed by human standards in terms of, the way our sanitation protocols have to be in the way that our employees need to wear hair nets and beard nets and wash their hands and gown. And there are completely different standards if you're a feed grade facility versus if you're a human grade facility. And there have been instances where there have been recalls in the, traditional kibble space for bad batches of wheat gluten, for example, that have caused even some dogs to die. And so it's really, it's both the sort of like health benefits, but also just like the quality assurance. And then I think in terms of, does that make sense so far?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And then I think in terms of the actual health benefits, it's, there's emerging research. I would say there aren't a lot of longitudinal studies saying, XYZ about human grade food. There are some that have pointed to fresh human grade quality food, extending dogs' lives, et cetera, but it is still quite limited at the moment. But I think for us, we see in examples and anecdotes from our customers, and I'll use my wife's family dog as an example. Their dog Wiley was sort of on her last legs, and the family felt like sort of maybe she was coming to the end of her life. And we tried switching her to Spot and Tango UnKibble, and it was like she had a new lease on life. Like her energy went through the roof. Her coat was healthier. She was just...
How old was she?
She was, I believe she was 9 or 10.
Okay.
So not like, too late to. I guess my take on it is never too late to invest in good food for you.
Totally, exactly. And it was just this amazing story. And I would get, videos from my now mother-in-law, just of Wiley hopping around the kitchen, and it was like she had rewound 5 years. So it was. There's stories like that, and we hear that from customers all the time. And I think, it sort of is a little bit of common sense too, where, how would we feel if we were eating McDonald's every single day? How would we feel if, or worse, like you're not going to feel at your best. And so I think that same mentality applies to your dogs, and our customers really see that in the way that their energy changes, the coat and the healthiness of their coat, et cetera. And so people really see that and reach out to us about that a lot, which is really fun to hear.
Wow, that's great. Great story. Talk to us about food science, the science behind your food. So what's actually happening in your food science process, I guess, in your company? And where do you see it outperforming both legacy kibble and refrigerated fresh offerings? Yeah,
so with UnKibble, we have a pretty novel technique that we use called fresh drying. And this is a bit of a trade secret, so I can't get into all the details, but essentially we use freeze dryers, if you're familiar with freeze dryers.
Yeah.
And so we use freeze dryers, but the way that we use them is a bit different than usual. Usually freeze dryers, the whole point is to preserve the raw nature of the food. And so they are at extremely low temperatures for a very long time. And in our process, we go to slightly higher temperatures to ensure that the food also cooks during the process, which is something we validated with third-party labs and is sort of the secret sauce that makes this, not like a freeze-dried raw product, but actually a cooked, fresh, dry product, which is a bit of an oxymoron. But as we're doing that, we are heating up the product, not super hot, but to, over 165 degrees Fahrenheit for a long period of time. And we actually cook the product for about 18 hours. So it's like a slow cooked process. And then during that period of time, it also extracts the moisture to make it shelf stable. So we have a shelf stable cooked product. And that's why we call it FreshDry and feel like it's sort of creating a category of its own. In terms of how it's outperforming, we've run digestibility studies, and we see the digestibility of our product being over 90%, compared to most kibbles are sort of in the low 80s, or even high 70s. And so we see a meaningful improvement to the digestibility and nutritional availability for dogs. And then on the fresh frozen side, we have very similar digestibility scores as our fresh. We also have fresh frozen recipes. We sort of match those digestibility scores, but we're able to outperform in terms of convenience and in terms of price. So as I mentioned, we're about 40% less expensive, and that's because we take out the cold chain, right? You don't have to pay. We don't have to pay for frozen trucks driving across the country or across the border. We don't need to put dry ice or insulation in the product in the final box that goes to the customer's door. And so we pass all of those savings. And also it's a lot lighter of a product because all the moisture is extracted. So we pass all of those savings on to the customer. And that's where we get that meaningful savings gap. And then convenience is the other big piece, right? If you guys, I don't know if you guys have ever fed your dogs or growing up, like a fresh frozen product, but you need to remember to defrost it. If you don't, if you don't remember, you're pulling out of the freezer and you're, put in the microwave or rushing and you're cutting it with scissors and it's all over your hands. And if you want to travel anywhere, you're packing a cooler with ice packs and it's quite a procedure. And so we find that on the convenience, axis, we really outperform the fresh frozen players. So that's where this UnKibble product is sitting, and it really is creating a category in and of itself, both in the U.S. and now in Canada too.
We'll get to Canada in a minute. Let's spend a bit on your business model. You're I guess we call you a digitally native company, direct to consumer. So I went on the site and it asks you. It's great. It asks you a bunch of questions. How old's your dog? What kind of breed? I love the fact you can choose multiple. I have no idea what breed my dog is, so I just kind of started we surmise he's German Shepherd and Rottweiler, but who knows? Could be other stuff. But anyway, then it comes out and gives you both a customized size and we recommend how often we feed. So that part's great. Talk about the business model. So, the idea of I don't know if I call you a pure play, but what have you learned about your lifetime value, your CAC, your cost of customer acquisition, and what have you learned about that, and how's your churn, and just give the people a sense of what it's like to be a digitally native pet food company.
Yeah, so those are all the metrics we think about every day. Russell and I wake up and we check all our dashboards, and that is, tattooed on my arm is CAC over LTV, or LTV over CAC. And so in terms of this model, really the thinking here is that for something like pet food, it just makes so much sense, right? Like your dog will eat. And it's actually good for dogs to be eating the same thing and have consistency. You feed the same amount every day. It's very predictable. And so it makes a lot of sense.
So they just don't care if it's repetitive.
Yeah. So like dogs don't need variety in the way that humans do. And actually it's typically not good for their stomachs to be feeding them different things all the time. So once you find something that works.
It's like me and pasta in university, Sylvain. I had pasta every day, and it was like that Gary Larson cartoon, pasta
Katie?
Again.
Yeah.
I'm excited about it every day.
Yep. Love that. I can relate. So it's the consistency. And so it's really a market that just makes a lot of sense for direct to consumer. Also, going to the pet store, I think a lot of us can relate to, the 90-pound bags of kibble hauling over your shoulder. Yep. It's a big sort of process. And so we just felt like there's got to be an easier way. And then also the direct to consumer model allows us to provide this personalization. And so at first, when we launched, funny enough, it wasn't really personalized. You chose based on your dog's weight, you chose either a small, medium, large, or extra large plan. And what we found was people were saying, hey, I love the food, but I'm getting a little bit too much. Like the weight bands are too wide, 30 to 60 pounds or 60 to 90 pounds. I'm either having too much in my fridge or too little. And so we felt like, hey, why don't we personalize this more and tailor this more to exactly what this dog needs? And this is also a way of combating obesity in dogs, which affects, two in every 3 dogs roughly in North America are overweight or obese.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting question as I was going through the flow. What is your dog? You see the ribs, you don't see the ribs. That basically you're trying to gauge, that the relative health for your pet. Now let's talk about the move to Canada. So I guess in some ways your home and native land kind of idea. How about we look north? Now it's a complicated time to be shipping across the border, or at least a little more complicated than it used to be. Why Canada? Why didn't you go to there's lots of affluent people in Mexico. There's U.S. is a massive market. What prompted the international move into Canada?
Yeah, so obviously there's a personal component. My parents and sister talk to me every day about when can we feed our dog Spot and Tango. So that's definitely on the back of my mind at least. The other component though is just I think the market really feels in terms of just dog ownership and in terms of the mentality towards dogs, as far as the humanization of pets and that sort of thing, Canada is further along in that development or evolution than Mexico, as an example. People really are treating their dogs like family and thinking about them more and more that way. And then the other piece is really just, the proximity. We produce in the Northeast. And we have shipping partners. So we have a warehouse in Mississauga, actually, where we ship from. And so we're not shipping directly from our warehouse in the U.S. to customers. We're shipping to our warehouse in Toronto, where we have, a team, and then we are distributing from there. And so that sort of made sense operationally, logistically, and the market was there. And so far, since we've launched, we've seen just incredible signals in terms of, you asked about CAC and lifetime value. Our customer acquisition cost is significantly lower than what we're seeing in the US right now. And we think it's largely because this is just such a new product category and there's very little competition.
That's like a newness arc. That's a typical newness arc, right? In a DTC's life, right? The early adopters, right? The people who've heard of it. Is that what you're finding? Like, I've been waiting for this to come to Canada. That tends to lower your CAC in the first while,
so
right?
We're absolutely seeing that, and we're seeing that for sure. I would say that already, 6 weeks in is starting to peter out, and CAC has gone up a bit, but it's still, at first it was 5 times less than the US, and now it's sort of half. So still seeing amazing efficiency and a lot of excitement. And so we feel like it was a really good decision, and we're excited to continue growing in the market.
Tell us more about your dealings with the CFI and Canadian regulations in general. So we are talking a lot about regulations in Canada and bureaucracy. So what was your experience coming into Canada?
Yeah, so for us, the main sort of hurdle was, and this is something that we maybe didn't expect as we started this process, was facilities in the U.S. have to have something called APHIS, which is a certification that allows you to import into Canada for agricultural goods. We had to make sure that our manufacturing facilities sort of like met those standards, have an inspector come out, and also all of our suppliers and partners, we had to make sure that they had this certification as well. So that did delay the process by about 4 months, but we've sort of figured that out. Worked with the regulatory bodies, and every shipment that goes into the U.S. needs to have a certificate and a letter essentially affirming that it abides by this certification. And then once we had that, it's a relatively smooth process to get it into Canada. But as I mentioned earlier, we can't ship. It's not like a t-shirt where you can just ship it from an American warehouse and get it across the border. You need to do like a B2B transfer to a warehouse in Canada and then do the distribution from there. So that was another piece of the puzzle here that we need to figure out, which we have.
In terms of your channels, your distribution strategy, you are a D2C model. You have a D2C model. How do you see your approach unfold in Canada? Are you going to look at grocers? Are you going to deal with more retailers to connect with more Canadians? What's your strategy moving forward?
Yeah. So for now, I think, there's a lot of exciting opportunities, and both Russell and I are kind of like golden retrievers sometimes, where we want to pursue every shiny object. But I think for now, it's about being focused and being disciplined, and we really do feel like the economics are working on the direct to consumer model. We're growing, as an example, just to give you some numbers, we're growing about 65% year over year across the business. We're doing, about $200 million of revenue run rate right now. We are profitable. And so we feel like this model is really working, and the unit economics in terms of the customer acquisition cost and the LTV and the payback period is really all singing, in harmony. And so we do feel like there's a lot of scale still online, and a lot of consumers are moving online specifically for things like pet food. That said, retail is certainly, I think in the cards for us in some point and in some capacity. Especially with the UnKibble product, because it is shelf stable, we don't need these fridges and freezers on shelf. It's a lot easier to make that transition. Yeah. So I think it's more of a question of when, not if. But I would say it's not going to be in 26. It probably won't be in 27. But I think in 2028 and beyond, we could definitely see something, either UnKibble or some variant of UnKibble living on shelf and in grocery stores.
Well, congratulations. I mean, there's not a lot of DTC digitally native brands that can boast about those kind of numbers, those positive numbers. We often hear the opposite. Like last week, the perennial kicking bag Allbirds, for example. So and don't tell me you're going to turn yourself into an AI.
No. Yeah, you mean the AI company, Allbirds? Yeah.
What a grift that is. Me and my colleagues been talking about that. They're like, "What do you think it means?" I said, "It's a grift, man." It's a funny question to ask as a wrap up question, because you've accomplished so much. You just came to Canada, but what's next? You just want to get your base established in Canada. Any insight into what's in your product road, or what are you going to be thinking of for the next 12, 18 months?
Yeah, so I think in Canada we've had such a great launch with our main product UnKibble. We would look to bring more products to market as well, including our snacks and supplements. And we have a new product that we just launched about 9 months ago in the US called Pup Gum, which is a novel dental product. Obviously, dogs can't chew gum. It's a bit of a provocative name, right. But it's actually
I'd like to watch them try, though. I mean, that would be very.
But it's a first of its kind dental chew where it has a postbiotic that's clinically proven to reduce bad dog breath. We're likely going to be launching that in Canada soon. I'd say in the next 6 to 12 months. And then we have a few other products that are similar in terms of novel, clinically effective ingredients infused with fun sort of branding in other sort of spaces other than the dental care space. And so that will be launching hopefully next year, a few more products like that. And then looking forward, I think potentially other international expansion, whether it's to Mexico or to the UK or to Europe or even Australia, that's something that's on our radar as well.
Well, Dylan, on behalf of Sylvan and myself and the Food Professor Podcast, congratulations on everything you've achieved, and wishing you continued success. And thanks for joining us on the Food Professor Podcast.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for having me. It's really, really great chatting with you today.
Thank you, Dylan.
We're back. Let's get now, as you know, I was in Vancouver a couple of weeks ago.
That's right.
And I sat down with David Long.
I was flying over to Vancouver, and you were coming back.
Thank God we weren't flying into LaGuardia. We might have just had some more connection.
And we all bought carbon credits for it.
Yes, we are all carbon neutral in our travels. So I sat with David Long, the Greater Vancouver Food Bank, and I talked about him on the show before. Probably the most innovative food bank that I've had the opportunity to talk with. And he wanted me to give you a couple things. So I'm here on camera to give you this. I'm going to show that into the camera here. He wanted me to give you an official pin. There it is, an official pin. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That's great.
So to add to your collection of hardware that you wear on your jackets that I think everybody takes notice of.
Yes.
And he also wanted me to pass this along and have you try some. So this is a product that they make. So they get all these strawberries, excess product, and of course strawberries don't last long. Check that out. And they package this up. They dehydrate it, which takes the weight down like intensely, like it weighs nothing. So when we think of food affordability, we should be thinking of our northern community, so they can ship it around. Now, it's open. I think I opened it. Try one. So I just wanted you to try that. And so for those of you at home watching or listening, Sylvain's trying some dehydrated strawberries. And I was shocked at these things. So it's simply dehydrated fresh strawberries. Give one a try. All the nutrition, none of the weight. What do you think of the flavor? It's a burst of flavor, right? There's nothing.
Is.
What's the main ingredient? What's on the ingredient list?
Let me see. It's really long.
Yeah.
Strawberries.
Right. So he does it with blueberries and all kinds of interesting things. Anyway, he wanted me to pass that along, and
this is awesome.
And maybe, just maybe, you and I should do a bit of a road trip out to the West Coast together.
So no sugar added, but there's too much sugar.
Yeah.
What's up with that? This is a single ingredient product.
Front of label packaging issue. There you go, right there. Anyway. I
don't know.
Anyway, brilliant stuff going on there. You and I should take a bit of a road trip out in the fall.
Do they sell this?
No, they give it to their that one. They give to their all their constituents in their network. They do. They are doing a pilot for trying to sell some product, but and make some money, because he's got a very different perspective of how they do things. So anyway,
but it's really interesting, because when you dry fruits, they tend to shrink a lot. Mm-hmm. They're not like they're same.
They look good. They're just dry, and the flavor, burst of flavor.
Yeah, exactly.
Burst of flavor. Anyway, so again, the revolution he's done there, from turning, when he arrived, 20% fresh food given out to his constituencies, now to 75, 80%. This is one of the examples of that.
Right.
All right, so when I was in here, I wanted last couple things. So I visited. You're asking me, why on earth are you in Pierrefonds going to a restaurant in Montreal? And I drove here specifically to get around. And so I visited a small local...
You have a hotel room downtown.
Yeah, the heart of Montreal.
Within 500 meters, you have 20,000 great restaurants.
Some of the top-ranked restaurants in North America.
And you go through the entire island.
Yeah.
What's up?
I go to this place called Vivaldi. And it is a small family-owned restaurant. And Steve and his brother own it. How did I find out about these guys? They are a YouTube, Instagram, TikTok phenomenon. They just hit 1 million subscribers on YouTube. And Steve, I met him. I got a picture with him. Wonderful guy. Came out to say hi. But he was working he's a working chef, man. He's the hardest working social media guy I've ever seen.
Wow.
The food was great. I wouldn't describe it simply as a red sauce restaurant like Sugo that we went to.
Yep.
Great variety of food, super fresh, wonderful people, lots of people in the restaurant on a Tuesday night. And a few people like me who are come random in, have found them on TikTok or found them online and just want to meet him. So we're going to get him on the podcast because, I want to talk about this whole social media phenomenon that he's captured this wave, and also how is he dealing with...
How was the restaurant? Was it full, or...
He had a couple of parties.
It was Tuesday night.
It was Tuesday night. It was full. They're closed Mondays. Wow. It was, I would say, 80% full. Family place, a couple of big parties, but he said, we've been around 20 years. This YouTube thing hasn't made the difference between success and failure by any means, but it's pretty interesting.
Wow.
Some new, younger people are coming to the restaurant. Weird people like myself who travel to North America to tell stories. So anyway, we're going to get him on the show and hear a little bit more about his story. And last but not least, congratulations to Pizza Baliati. Now, we went to the Depths in Toronto. I took you to the Pizza Baliati, part of our pizza our pizza journey, and they just announced they're opening up a second location.
Whoa!
In the annex, a little easier to find near downtown Toronto. More lineups, right in the heart of Studentville, right in University of Toronto.
Well, it's for students, but the crust was to die for.
Yeah. For a guy who doesn't like thin crust, you like.
I do not like thin crust, but that thin crust was pretty good.
Well, once again, congrats to Pizza Baliati. It makes it even a little bit closer for me to get more pizza.
Yeah, I think they're probably going to find like some corner street there, make it quaint.
Well, they're in there, what we call the annex. So I think, anyway, so if you're in Toronto and you like good pizza, that's one great pizza spot to spot. Anyway.
I would want to live upstairs.
Yeah.
With all the smell.
I don't know. I'd be perennially hungry. So that's a wrap on this episode. Once again, we're live here at the SIAL show. You can hear a bit of the buzz in the background, and we're going to have lots of great conversations tomorrow. We got Vince Breton tomorrow. He's back on the show talking about all the great things happening in his business. Who else we got? We got who have we got? We got Martin from Group Expo.
Yeah. Absolutely. We're seeing him tonight. This is a banquet tonight.
Big banquet tonight. So we got lots of great guests and both content for the rest of the season. And then, as we always do, we'll be taking a little break over the summer, but lots of fresh baked content that we're going to be recording here with all kinds of innovative people. So look forward to that. All right. So that's a wrap on this show. I'm Michael LeBlanc, media entrepreneur, and you are?
I'm the food professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Well, safe travels, everybody. I mean, it's great to be in person with you. Nothing like it. But safe travels for everybody who happens to be moving around, and for you and I when we go home in a couple of days.
Absolutely. Take care.